What's up, ladies and gents, Ghost here, back with some more Battlefield 4, some new maps this time. No more Siege of Shanghai, at least not for now. The game is finally here, it's been released for everybody, and the release dates were a little bit staggered, so some people had to wait longer than others, but nevertheless, now everybody has their hands on the game, and I've put in quite a few hours with it, so I thought I'd share my thoughts on my first impressions of the game, what really stood out for me, what blew me away and sort of, you know, smacked me in the face and said, wow, this is really different than in Battlefield 3. So the first thing to really hit me is just how atmospheric the game can be. DICE have done a great job of putting these little intricate things into levels that just really increase the realism and make you feel as if you're really there. Parasol Storm is obviously a really good example of this, and despite the fact that we've already seen a lot of footage from this map from Gamescom, when you're actually playing the map for yourself and the waves start crashing, the wind starts blowing, and there's palm trees swaying around as if they're little matchsticks, it's so real. It really adds to the sort of atmospheric part of the game, and you feel as though you're really there. Things get really tense. Now, some more intricate things are, for example, on Operation Locker, there's a portion of the map which is outdoors in a snowy area, and when you actually go outdoors, you'll get a lot of snow that blows in your face, visibility is really bad, the edge of your screen starts getting all frosty, and it actually makes it really difficult to see people. Even things like if you're using a red dot sight or some kind of a holographic sight, that will get frosty itself, and if you try and look through it, it's almost as if the sun is glaring into your gun sight. You can't really see anything, so it sort of renders your red dot sight in certain situations effectively useless. And these are just some of the few changes that DICE have put into the game, and I have to say I'm really fond of them. So graphics wise, the game looks amazing. I have absolutely no complaints in this department. Definitely one of the best looking games of 2013, if not the best looking game. But it certainly is a hardware intensive game. When I jumped in my first round at the time, I only had a GTX 580, a single GTX 580, and I set everything to low or off in the video options, and I was getting around 50 to 60 FPS, which is, well, needless to say, less than optimal. Then I went and I picked up a GTX 780, and I'm actually planning to make a video about this because if you saw my previous video on the GTX 780 versus the R9 290X, I did in the end decide to go with the 780, but I'll save that for the other video. So I picked up one of those, cranked everything up to ultra or the highest settings, 4x MSAA, anti-aliasing and all that good stuff, and even though I have an i7 3770K running at 4.5 gigs, I'm still only really getting around 70, maximum 80 FPS, so it really is a resource hog. Now, some other big changes that really hit me is when I first got to fly the jets. Obviously, as you guys probably know by now, I am a huge fan of the jets. I love flying them in Battlefield 3. They were probably my favourite vehicle, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on them in BF4, especially since we really haven't seen any footage of them at all. So now the jets have been split up into two different categories. You have the attack jets, which are essentially the ground pounders, are designed for taking out enemy armour and infantry, and then you have stealth jets, which are the anti-air jets. Now, I think my first ever jet experience was jumping in a stealth jet on Goldmud Railway. Things are really different than they were in BF3. So a lot of people will rely on the third-person camera in BF3 to maneuver the jet around and dogfight and such, because the camera would stay perpendicular to the ground. So it was sort of a lot less bewildering, and you could easily get a location on exactly where you were without the camera sort of turning around all over the place like it does in first person mode. But they've now changed that in BF4, as you'll see from the footage in the background. Whether I'm in first person or third person, the camera will stay perpendicular to how the jet is turned. So if I turn to the side, the entire camera turns, so you really have to get used to finding your bearings as you're flying through the sky. And I have to say, after dogfighting a little bit with a few guys, I really like these changes. Now you have to rely so much more on your air radar and things like vapor trails from the enemy jet to figure out where they've gone, which turn they've made, whereas in BF3 you could really rely on that third person camera a lot to simply see the jet physically. But now I'm finding myself using first person view most of the time. I don't really like third person. I find that it's harder to actually control the jet in third person mode than it is in first person. Now, another huge change to the stealth jets is that they are insanely fast. Attack jets feel pretty similar to how the jets were in BF3. So if you're going in for a strafing run over a tank, you'll have plenty of time to use your 30mm cannons and take him out. But if you're in a stealth jet and you try and go in for a strafing run on some infantry, you literally get like 1 second of airtime. They are that fast. Now, while that is a bit of a disadvantage for taking out ground units, that's not really what they're designed for. They're designed to be quick and maneuverable and take out enemy air targets, and they definitely really succeed well at that. They are so nippy, they're so much faster at turning than attack jets, decelerating, accelerating, so while you may not be able to get any strafing runs in on enemy ground targets, you're definitely going to be able to outmaneuver the enemy attack jets. So just to talk a little bit about classes, I've mostly been playing Assault and Engineer. I haven't really touched Support or Recon yet, so I won't really comment on them, but the Assault class is great. I pretty much only have the same gadgets I did in the beta currently, so I'm running with defibs, which now of course work properly as they should, and the med packs. And I've also unlocked a couple of assault rifles. Now I can see straight away that the M416 is an absolute beast. As soon as you pick this weapon up, you're probably going to be replacing the Scar H or the AK-12 with this weapon. I think it has 750 rounds per minute. The recoil is definitely manageable, and this is the weapon personally that I'm running around with at the moment. Now, if you play the beta and you hop on the engineer class, you're going to notice something a bit different. You don't actually have access to the RPG like you did in the beta. Instead, the starting weapon is the Law missile launcher. And I think this is a great choice by DICE. This is an interesting launcher. What it will actually do is it will lock on to a vehicle if it's in its close vicinity. So if you fire the projectile in the close vicinity of a vehicle, it would actually catch a lock-on and do a top-down attack, which usually hits for around 24 or 25 damage, which isn't too bad at all. Now, while this has its advantages, of course, new players to the game aren't going to be used to things which are always in Battlefield, like bullet drop, projectile drop, and all that kind of thing. It makes it a little bit easier for them to get some hits on vehicles like tanks and stuff, because they only have to fire the missile in the general direction of the vehicle and it will just home on and do the rest itself. But this can also be a disadvantage. Say you're right behind a vehicle and you're in a prime position to do an RPG attack from the back, which would normally disable the vehicle. The Law launcher will actually always lock on in the same fashion, and as soon as it reaches the vehicle, it changes its trajectory, goes up, and then will do a top-down attack. And it will always hit for around 24 or 25 damage. So that's really the trade-off that this weapon comes with. So I have gotten a chance to play all of the maps and most of the game modes on those maps. And Rush is great. The level design, all in all, is fantastic. But as for Levolution, it, to me, is a little bit of a letdown in some maps. Before you all start slating me, let me just explain why that is. I feel like in the beta, they did a good thing with showcasing a map like Siege of Shanghai. So with the skyscraper falling and all, this really affected the map a lot, and it was this epic Levolution event. But unfortunately, on some of the other maps, the event isn't quite as epic or map changing as it is on Siege of Shanghai. There are some maps like Flood Zone, where obviously it floods the entire level and it really changes how you get around the map. You know, if you get caught out in the water, swimming around with only a pistol, you're going to get fucked, basically. So it changes the map up in a big way. But then there are other maps, like, for example, Zavod. Is it 331 or 311? I'm not sure. I don't remember which, but the Zavod map, the Levolution event in this map is there is an explosive inside a building. You have to start a timer, which lasts for 3 minutes, and anybody can stop that timer. So that's quite interesting, because it means people can actually stop you from doing this Levolution event, and I really like that. But the event in itself is essentially that when this bomb goes off, the huge smokestack on the level falls down, and it will kill anybody in its path, but usually that isn't many people at all. Once it's fallen down, it basically lies on the floor in a few pieces, and infantry can run through it. It's now become a sort of pipe. That's about it. It doesn't really change the map up a lot, so I don't really see the point in them putting this computer mechanic where people can stop their Levolution event, start it again, and once the countdown reaches 0, the event happens, because the event doesn't really change the map that much anyway. And then there are other maps like Gulmuld Railway, where there really isn't a huge event that happens as such, but there are these IED explosive devices which you can find all over the place, and if you shoot them, they will destroy any nearby armour in one shot. There are also detonators linked up to them, so you can find the detonator and interact with that to destroy the explosive, or you can just throw a grenade on top of it. So while this is a nice feature, it's not exactly map changing. I am level 12 at the moment, and I believe you need to hit level 10 to do commander mode, and I tried it out once, and I have to say, I wasn't all that impressed. I was playing on Rush, so I didn't have access to a lot of the cool things like the Tomahawk missile. All I really had was UAV, supply drop, and I also had access to things like vehicle drops later on, but really it just wasn't all that fun. You can sort of order your squads to attack certain objectives, you can promote squads if they're doing well, you can mark high value targets, you can put down UAVs, but really it just comes down to a lot of staring at the map and not doing much. I don't doubt that in Conquest it's a little bit more action where you've got Tomahawk missiles that you can throw down and you score a few points, or maybe I'm just not getting how you're actually supposed to be the commander, but for me, I really wasn't scoring many points at all, at least in rush mode on 32 players. I just really wasn't having fun in it, so I'm going to give it another try in the future, but so far, not really having that much fun with the commander mode. Now, I am, however, happy to say that the VoIP is working really well. There were some issues in the beta where people's voices would be ridiculously low, even if you set your VoIP volume to 100% and you have the box ticked so that it sort of tones down the game sounds when somebody is trying to communicate with you. You were still experiencing times where your allies or your squad members were trying to tell you something and you just couldn't hear them. And that is to some extent still going on in the official BF4 game now, but I think it really comes down to people who aren't used to using their microphones and sort of calibrating them properly. They just don't have them set up, they don't have the sound levels right, so it can be frustrating at times when some guy's trying to talk to you or say something and you have to be, hey mate, I can't hear you, turn your microphone up. But when you actually get in a squad with a couple of guys who are ready to communicate with you and you can hear them fine, it can be really, really fun and productive. So on the whole, I'm definitely pleased with my experience with the game so far. I can't wait to bring you guys some more content. However, with that said, I won't say that the game is without its faults. It kind of reminds me a little bit of some beta problems. There are a lot of strange rubber banding issues going on. A lot like there were in the beta. We're getting strange things like crashes from servers. Sometimes my game will crash, and I have just gotten a new graphics card with new video drivers, so I'm not sure if that's part of the problem, but other people are telling me they're having similar problems to me. If you've tried the diffuse game mode, you'll know that that game mode just seems to be completely broken at the moment. It's essentially like Search and Destroy in Counter-Strike, if you've ever played that. And you have one life. Once you die, you go into spectator mode, and you spectate the other players on your team. And at the moment, it's kind of meshing the in-game experience with spectator mode. If you hit the Q and E keys, which are, by the way, the hotkeys to switch between players when you're in spectator mode in BF4, you will actually go and jump to somebody else's camera, even though you're still alive. And then you will end up sort of jumping back to yourself, and it says, like, you're spectating yourself, even though you're still alive, and it's just obviously unplayable right now. So DICE really need to get on that and get a patch out to fix it. So there you go, guys, that's my 2 cents on the first impressions of Battlefield 4 for now. Let me know yours in the comments down below. If you haven't yet picked up the game, are you going to do so? If so, why? And if not, why not? Thanks for watching, guys. If you're new here, then feel free to hit that subscribe button down below for plenty more Battlefield 4 videos coming in the future. And I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.